Hello, everybody. So this is the video for lecture 2 in week 11. So as you can see here, what we're going to be covering is lecture 12, methods. So this is our first of several lectures on methods, and this is just going to introduce us to the concept. So we'll look at those lecture slides. Also make sure Eclipse is open. Ah, why is typing so hard? And also, we'll make sure that Zybooks is open so we can take a look at those exercises. All right. So I've got the slides downloaded now, and we'll open them up. So yeah, Java methods. So what we're going to learn is what is a method, how to write a method, and how to call a method. So this is the bare minimum that we need. All right. So, what methods are in Java and in other programming languages as well are named blocks of code that perform specific tasks. And you can call them by name. And so they allow for you to reuse your code and they allow for module programming so that you can take your code from one project and easily include it in another project so you don't have to write it again. And they can make your code easier to read. So that's why we like them. They're implemented in just about every single programming language. Sometimes they'll be called functions instead of methods. Now, they're typically called methods when they're in a programming language that has classes, which Java has. So we call them methods. But you'll probably hear me call them functions at various times anyway, just to make sure that you hear kind of both names for them. And methods, they have a name, right? We said they're named blocks of codes, and they can accept parameters. What that means is that we can get data into our function, and they can return values, which means that we can get data out of our method. So we can get data in and we can get data out of our method. Okay. So how do we make a method? So they're declared within a class, and they consist of a method signature and a method body. A method signature defines the method name and its parameters, if there are any. There doesn't have to be. And the method body contains the statements that define what the method does. Okay. Now, the next slide is going to show us the syntax of a method, and we will definitely look at that. But I want to go over to Eclipse and just show you. So this is something left over from earlier. Let me make a new project, and we'll just call this like method example or something. And that's fine. And in there, we will add a new class, and we'll call that method example as well. I'll check the box for public static void main. Okay, so this is just a blank project. So we've seen this a million times, right? And now that we are going to learn what a method is, we've already heard that you put a method inside of a class. So up here at the top, it says public class, right? And I now see that I misspelled method when I created it, but that's fine. Who cares? Method example. And then inside of that, we have our main. But remember how we've been referring to this. This is the main method. So this is main method is a method. So all the code that we put here has already been a method. We've been writing a method all semester, right? The main method is the one that starts when your program starts. So main method is a method. It runs when you run your program. Okay. And we can put code in here and it can do things, right? Like, so for example, I can, let's do this. So I will add an import Java util.scanner so that we can read stuff from the user. And then in our method, I'm going to do scanner. No, in the main method, sorry, I shouldn't have said in our method. Scanner scnr equals new scanner system.in. All right. And let's get the user to do something. So system.out.print, and let's just say type a number. And then let's just do, well, let's make it an int. Int x equals scnr dot next int. Okay, so we did all this work. We got a number. Actually, let's change it. I want to make it a double, and I'm going to make it radius. And then we'll change this to a next double. And now I'm going to change this to type the radius of a circle. Okay, so what do we got? Let's run this and see what happens. So it says type the radius of a circle. I can type a number. I say 5, and then everything ends, right? And like, let's say we wanted to calculate the area of a circle, right? I would do like double area equals, and I would have to put the formula for calculating the area of a circle here. So like math dot pi times, and it's radius squared, right? Pi r squared. So there we go. I calculated the area of a circle, and then I could print out the answer, right, with the system.out.print line, and I could say the area is, and then we can put in the area. And of course, this will work just fine, and we haven't talked about methods yet. So type in the radius of a circle, 5, and it says the area is 78, right? So nothing here has anything to do with the new concept of methods. But here's what we could do with a method. So backing it up to, do we need to go to the previous slide? I don't know. So method signature and method body. The signature defines the name and parameters, and the body contains the statements that define what the method does. And so what we could do is I could put a method here that could calculate the area of a circle, for example. And we'll explain the parts of this soon, but just like this one starts up here with public static void main, after we finish our main, or before, I could put public static double, and I could say maybe like calc area or something like that. So I can call my method calc area to calculate the area of a circle. Um, I don't want to type calculate circle area. That's too long of a name, but I'll say calc area. And in here, I need the radius to come inside here. And then I'm going to put some code, and then we'll explain it. So I could just say double area equals, and let's just copy our code from up there. This code is actually incorrect because um, here when I wrote double R, I was actually saying that the radius was going to be called R. So I'll call it R here. And this is also a pi r squared, right? And then I'm going to say return R. No, return area. Okay. So this is a method. So the purpose of this method is just to calculate the area of a circle. Now, we haven't looked at the parts of this yet, but what we've got defined here is the entire definition of a method that will calculate the area of a circle. And I can come up here now to where I was previously calculating the area circle. And instead of actually putting the code up here, I can just say area equals, and I can now call my method. So my method's name was calc area. So I just go calc area, and then in parentheses, if there are any inputs to this method that it needs, which it needs a radius, it needs a double, then I put that here. So we read the radius in on line 11, and then I can put the radius into our new method called calculate area. And you'll see that even though there's no code up here that, does pi r squared, it will actually work the exact same as it did before, right? Type the radius of the circle 5, the area is 78. Okay. So we moved basically our code to calculate the area of a circle down here. And then when we want to use it in our main method, now we just have to say calc area. So we don't have to type pi r squared. We just say calc area radius and we'll get the area, right? So that's an example. Now let's see what it's supposed to look like. So um, when we're looking at a method, this is just a simple method. So we're going to start with public static on most of our methods for now. The public means that technically the method would be visible from outside of the current class. That doesn't matter to us, but we can still make them public. The static means that it's a little bit tricky to explain right now with the concepts that we have, but I guess the way to think of it is this is going to be I don't know if this is worthwhile or not, but if I write like a string and I say like my string, right? And I put something in there like my name. Um, my string is an object with it and its type of type string, which is a class. Okay. And if I want to call methods for this string, I can do things like my string dot to uppercase, right? We learned about methods like that. That would convert the string to uppercase if we wanted to print it in uppercase, for example. The point is that in order to call uppercase or to uppercase, I needed a string to be created. And my string was called my string. But there's not every class works that way. Like if you wanted to, like if I made a character, um, I'll call it C, and I just put like, a lowercase g in there, and I want to make that G uppercase, I could do it with something like character dot to uppercase. And if you think about it, this is a little bit different, these two situations here. The first one, the method to uppercase lives inside of the string class, but we're not calling it with string to uppercase. We're calling it with my string dot to uppercase. So I actually had to have a string exist, and then I could call this method. And for the character uppercase, I didn't have to make something of type uppercase character. I was able just to call uppercase character to uppercase. And so that these are actually being used slightly differently in terms of like how the class is structured. And so the static has to do with that. So like the static is going to be a method that you can call without having an instance of the class. So public static is, we're just going to put that right now. We don't need to really think about it in our methods. The third part here says void. Void means that we do not need to return any data um, to the caller, basically. So void means there's nothing to return. Then we have the name, print hello. And then we have int num, and that's a variable. So the type is int, and the name of it is num. And then inside of curly braces, right? Open curly braces, close curly braces, we can do whatever we want. In this case, this code is going to print out the word hello. And specifically, because we stuck it in a for loop here, it's going to print the word hello, however, whatever num is. There's also a typo here. This is uppercase. It shouldn't be. But if I like take this, it might not copy very well, but I'll put it down here. Uh, Not too bad, I guess. Just need a little bit of fixing on the indentation. And fix that I. What else? Oh, there's also a missing double quote. Okay, so here's another method. So it looks very similar to the one that we wrote for the area of a circle. You can see some differences. Like this said double, where this one says void. This one said void because there was no return value. We did not need to return anything. But our calculate area does have a return value of double. And that's because after we calculate the area, we need to get the area back to where it came from. So we had to return the area so that if you say area equals calc area, this needs to produce a double. So that, when we calculate that the area was 78, it needs to return that 78 so that we can store it in the area. So that's a return value. And here it's a double. This one didn't need one. So we just said, print hello, or sorry, void. We just said void. All right, let's delete some of this stuff in here. I'm going to leave I'm just going to comment this out maybe so we can add it back without having to retype it. That's really frustrating. That's really frustrating. Okay. So I'm just commenting out our entire code here. So when I run this, nothing happens. Also, this is a good opportunity to notice that defining a method called calcarea and defining a method called print hello does not actually mean that they do anything down here in the console. In order to do anything, you have to run them. So right now in our main, I don't have really any code except for that scanner, right? So if I want to see what print hello does, I have to go up to my main and run the print hello method. And in order to run print hello, I need to give it a number. So if I put print hello 1 and I run my code now, it says hello. And if I put print hello 3, it says hello, 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 right? Because that's what this code does is whatever num you put in, it has a for loop that starts out at 0, goes up to num, actually num minus 1, and then for every time through the loop, it prints the word hello, right? So this prints hello however many times you put the number in there, right? So you put 99, and it's going to print hello 99 times, right? So it just scrolls all the way over. And so this is a method. Okay, let's come back here. So here's the parts just kind of enumerated for us to look at. So notice that the public static is not really explained here. We're just going to have it for the time being. But the third thing is the return value, which you can see here. There is none in this example. That's what void means. Then you have the method name. The rules for naming methods is the same as naming, any kind of variable. So print hello is fine. Parameters. Parameters are what needs to come into the method. So it's possible that you don't need anything to come into the method, but it's also possible that you have to, you need a number to come into the method so you can use it for something. So in this case, for our print hello, the number that comes in is going to be how many times we print the word hello. Okay, so return value, method name, parameters in parentheses. It can be blank, but even if it's blank in here, you still need the parentheses. And then open curly brace, close curly brace. And inside of that method, you can put whatever code you want, just like you would for any kind of code block. So yeah. Also, it says it here, but multiple parameters are separated by commas. You don't see it here, but if I had a second parameter, for example, on this print hello, like maybe a double called X, right? This is what it would look like. So you would type and then the name of it, comma, and then another type and another name, and you can put a lot of those if you want to, but we didn't need them. We only needed one here. So if you just have one, then you don't have any commas. And it is commas, not curly braces. All right. Here's another method. This is the same one, except it has int I up here instead of in here. The method body contains the statements that define the method's behavior. Yeah, so the part that's circled, right? The part that's circled is inside of those curly braces. That's what they call the method body. Um, Statements are enclosed within curly braces, sure. Local variables can be declared within the method body. Yes, that's worth mentioning. So like this print hello, right? It has a num come in, and also I can do like this, like int x equals 99, right? And if I wanted to put system dot out dot print line x, right? And I run this, it prints the 99 first, right? Because we're running our print hello method. And the first thing this method does now is it prints the word hello, or sorry, it prints 99 and then it starts printing hello. So the 99 comes first. But if you tried to take this line, system.out.println x, and you tried to put that here in the main method, it won't run. You're going to get an error and it says x cannot be resolved to a variable. So you can't print x in your main because in main, if we read it, there is no x up here in this section of the code, right? So main is from this curly brace to this curly brace. And so if you look right in here, there is no variable x. So there's no variable x here. So how can you print x? You can't. In your print hello method, you have int x equals 99 system.out.println x. You can print the x here because the x is inside of this method. So that's a local variable, right? So we sort of saw those in one of the sections from last week. But it's more relevant now that we can write our own methods. So the variables that you define in one method can only be accessed within that method. So if you define x in print hello, then you can use it in print hello, but you cannot use it in this other method up here, and you can't use it in the main method either. So local variables, okay? Local variables can be declared within the method body, and they're only going to be accessible within that method, right? I guess this slide explains that. So local variables are declared inside a method, and they're only accessible within that method. Limited scope and lifetime. So the scope is we can only access this x equals 99 within this method, not accessible outside of the method, okay? The lifetime is this. So when we run print hello is going to create this variable x, print it out, loop through here and print out a bunch of hellos, and then the method ends, right? When the method ends, the x variable is going to disappear. All the local variables for the method are going to disappear. So as soon as the method is done running, there is no x anymore. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. So that's the lifetime of the variable. So it only exists as long as the method is running and then it's gone. Okay, return values. So a method can return a value using the return statement. The return type is specified in the method signature, right? That's again, the third word there. The return statement terminates the method and returns the value to the caller. So like when I say return pi, the method ends and whatever is inside the variable pi is what is going to be returned. So if we return pi and pi is a double, then the fact that pi is a double here is why this had to be a double up here. So everything has to agree. So you can write stupid methods, right? Like I can do a public static int. I'm going to call my method 2. And what does it do? I'm going to return 2. So here's a method that returns an int, and I'm saying return 2. 2 is an int. So this method returns 2. Now, is this a good method? No, this is a pretty stupid method. Pretty stupid method. But if I were to do something like this, int my number, and I just say equals 2, and then I print my number, can you guess what number is going to be printed? Hopefully you can, and it is 2, right? So when you run the method 2, it just returns 2. And so int my number equals 2, which returns 2. There's a 2 here, which is going to be put into my number. So that's a very simple number that just returns the number 2. You could also make, various dumb things. Like you could do public static void pi, for example. And we could just be return math.pi. Maybe we're so lazy that we can't remember to type math.pi. We just want to return the math.pi because we can't remember to do it, right? Then if I do double my number equals pi, what do we got? We got a problem? Oh, we do. So I said public static void, right? And it says type mismatch cannot convert from void to double. And it tells me that the error is on line 19. So it's telling me the error is line 19 here, but really the problem is down here because this said public static void. Void means we're not returning anything, but then I returned math.pi, which is a double. So the fact that those did not agree is why this method did not run. So now I run it and we get pi. So now if I type pi, I'm getting pi. Or I can do this. I can do 2 times pi. Then we got 6.28, which is 2 times pi. Is this useful to do to write a method called 2 and write a method called pi that just return the number 2 and return the number pi? No, no, that's not useful. But we can do it, right? Um, and so I'm just trying to get across the idea of what a method can do. This is just more kind of stuff here. So here's an example. This is a method that computes the area of a triangle. It's kind of too long to fit on the page, it looks like. We'll look at it. No, I guess we'll look at it here. So public static double. So we see that it returns a double now that we're learning to read it. Compute triangle area. That's the name of the method. And it says double base, double height. So you might remember how to calculate the area of a triangle from, various math classes. The area of a triangle is 1/2 times the base times the height. So the body here, right? So we start the curly braces and end them here. The body of the method is double area equals 1/2 times base times height, and then we just return the area. And so you can make a method like this, and it calculates the area of a triangle. That's very similar to what we did with the one that was calculate the area of a circle, right? You put in the radius, and then we did pi r squared, and then we returned the result. So any kind of math calculations can be put into their own methods. That's a nice thing to do. This is just kind of showing how to do it. So there's a method up here. I didn't say it before, but if you look at the way I structured my code in Eclipse, we had public class method example, and then we had our main method. And below our main method, I wrote the method 2, I wrote the method pi, I wrote the method calc area, I wrote the method print hello. And I just put those all below. They did not need to be below though. So if you look at what we have on the lecture slide, here, this method is compute triangle area that came first. And then after the compute triangle area, then we had public static void main, which is our main method. And it doesn't matter which one's first. because when you start up your program, the one that is going to run is going to be the main method. So it doesn't matter the order, it's doing it based on the name. So it knows to run the main method. And the point here is that what we're doing is once you have a method to calculate the area of a triangle, you're able to, in your main, do something like this, compute triangle area 3, 2. And so I guess 3 is the base and 2 is the height. And this, you can just look at this and say, what is this doing? Well, it's going to compute the triangle area for a triangle with base 3 and height 2. And the one below it is going to calculate the triangle area for a triangle with base 10 and a height 33. Right? So this makes it readable. Like if you look at the main, you can see exactly what they're doing. They're calculating the area of two triangles, and then they're printing out the area of two triangles. Okay. So um, these are methods. Okay. Now, what are you going to have to do this week? So if I head over to no, I don't want to take a survey. If we head over to the Zybooks for this week, you'll see that we've got a couple sections on two-dimensional arrays, which was our previous lecture. And you'll see that there's a couple sections on user-defined methods. And so if you jump to 11.3, they're going to try to teach you in general, not Java specific, what we just talked about, the idea of like data coming in and data leaving, right? So uh, they've got a method here. We can look at this code and we can see that they've got a method called public static double calc pizza area. So this code here is supposed to calculate the area of a pizza. And then their main method just does calc area pizza, and that's going to calculate the area of a pizza. Okay. Um, the notice here says both use the access modifiers, public static, which we're going to be putting on everything. And it says public indicates the method may be called from any class in the program. Static indicates the method only uses the values that are passed to the method. Um, yeah. So that means it doesn't need to access variables that are within the class, which means you don't need to have an instance of the class. Um, so for now, we just are going to put public static on everything. If you come here and you take off like the static and you run it, you see, cannot make a static reference to the non-static method too. Um, so if you leave off the static, then you're going to have an issue. If you leave off the public, then it'll run okay, because we don't need to access this method from outside of this program or outside of this class, because we only have one class right now. So we'll need the static. Technically, we don't need the public here. You could even make it private and it should still run, but we don't know what that is. So for now, don't bother with it. We just will write public. So if we look at this, they're going to try to just explain the concept of a method. And it says, like, given the calc pizza area method defined above and the following main method, so this is the main method, how many calls to calc area pizza exist? So a method call is when we actually run the method. So this right here, where you're typing the name of the method with the curly brace, or not curly braces, with the parentheses there, that's what goes and tells that's what tells Python. That's what tells Java that we want to run our method. And that's called a method call. So this is calling the method once, and this is calling the method a second time. So we're calling the method twice, right? Every time we do this, this is calling the method two, this is calling the method pi. We called the two once, we called pi once. Those are method calls. How many method definitions of calc pizza area exist within main? That's a trick question. So if you look at the original code up here, This is main. This is the definition of calc pizza area. There, you do not have the definition of calc pizza area inside of main, right? They're not inside each other. Calc pizza area is up here and main is down here. They're side by side, really. You don't have one inside the other. So it's kind of a trick when it says how many method definitions of calc pizza area exist within main. 0. It's not inside. How many output statements exist in main? Well, we have system.out println, system.out println, so that's 2. How many output statements exist in calc pizza area? So calc pizza area, again, is this section up here. If we read just this section, how many output lines are there? Well, double, 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 double. None of these are outputs. Pizza diameter, pizza radius, pizza area, return. None of these are outputs, right? The only outputs are when you do system.out.print lines, right? So there are no outputs within calc pizza area. There are other places. Is main a method? Yes. Okay. Right. Then they talk about returning. We already know all about it, right? So let's see. Given the definition below, indicate which are valid return statements. Can you say return 9? Yeah, right. That's very similar to my return 2. Could you return num1? Now you can return any variables that exist. So if you look at this code here, int calc some value. So the return type is int, calculate some value, and then num1 and num2 are inputs to the method. Well, num1 and num2 are going to be accessible within the method, right? If they're inputs to the method, we can access them inside the method. So could you return one of them? Yes, you could. Could you return num1 plus num2 plus 1? Sure, why not? Could you just return? Can you type just return? Sometimes you can, but not here, because the fact that the return type was int means we have to return an int. So like here where I say static int 2, I can't just return because this right here promises that we're returning an integer. So I gotta put an integer here in order to make this code run. Same thing here. So if this says int, we can't just return by itself. We need to return an integer. So this is no, not allowed. Could you return num1, num2? No, like num1, num2 doesn't mean anything. This right here says we're returning a single integer. Well, this is not a single integer. So what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. Could you return 0? Yes, you can. What do the parentheses do here? Nothing. Okay. The following is a valid method definition. Character get item. Yeah, sure, that's fine. The following is a valid method definition for a method that returns 2 items. No, you can't return 2 items. We can only return 1 item. That's just the way Java works. If you want to return more than 1 number, you're going to have to use an array or something. So a method can only return 1 item or 0. Can you have a void here? Sure, right? That's how you say we don't need to return anything. That's also when you would be allowed to type return by itself. All right. So I'm going to skip down here. They talk more about these. Are there any challenge activities? There are. So let's look at this one. So 11.3.1, type the program's output. So find the main, because the main is what runs. So here's the main, and it does system.out println change value 4. So change value 4. So we're calling the method change value, and we're putting in a 4. So if you come up here to change value, which is the method defined up here, and we put in a 4, that means this 4 is going to be in this place, right? This is change value 4. So the 4 is inside of change value. This is change value x. So the x is going to be 4. So if the x is 4, and then we return x plus 1, well, if you put in a 4 here for x, 4 plus 1 is going to be 5, and so it's going to return 5. So a 4 comes into the method, and a 5 is going to be returned. So when you do change value 4, the result is 5. So what's it going to do? It's going to print 5. Okay. Now here's a method that takes 2 integers. So they're going to call change values 4, 3. So when you see 4, 3 here, you come up here to compare the method and their x, y, right? So that means the 4 is going to be the x and the 3 is going to be the y. What's it going to do with them? We return x plus y. So if a 4 and a 3 come in, we're going to be returning 4 plus 3. So we're going to return 7. So the result of this function is going to be 7, and we're doing system.out.println 7. So it's going to be 7. All right. They wrote a couple extra lines in here, but this is basically the same idea. So they're calling change values 1, 3. So x is going to be 1, y is going to be 3, right? X, y. Int result creates a variable called result. Result equals x plus y. That's going to be 1 plus 3 is going to be 4. And then we're going to return the result. So we're returning 4, and it's going to print it. Cool. Here it looks like they are going to make us define a method called pyramid volume. So we just need to drag everything where it goes. I don't know if we need it. They didn't say whether to put it before or after. I guess we actually don't have a choice. So if we're defining a method called pyramid volume, okay, it says double data type parameters, base length, base width. That means inside of pyramid volume, you're going to see double base length, double base width, and there's also pyramid height, double pyramid height. So you're going to expect to see all 3 of those. And then it says return to the volume as a double. So we need to look for, there's several versions here of our pyramid volume. We need to look for the one that has a return type of double, because they said returns the answer as a double. And we need to make sure it has those 3 variables, base length, base width, and pyramid height come in. So look at the first one, public static void. Okay, so this one's wrong, because if it's public static void, then that means there's no return. So that's wrong. We need to return a double. The next one is public static double. Okay, that's a good start. And it says pyramid volume. And then the parameters are integer base length, integer base width, integer pyramid height. But if I look up here, it says specifically double type parameters. So the second one is also wrong. We look at the third one, public static int. This one has an integer return type. That's wrong. It's supposed to be a double. So by the process of elimination, it's the fourth one here, public static double, pyramid volume, double base length, double base width, double pyramid height. So it's got to be this one. So then where do we put it over here? Well, the top is wrong because this needs to be inside of a class, and the class is defined down here. So here. But then you could also put it at the bottom, but you can't put it all the way at the bottom because this is now outside of the class again, right? Because the class has opening curly braces and closing curly braces. So this is also not in the class. So the only proper place to put it is here, which is inside the class, but not inside of main. And we should indent it the same as the other method. So this is where it should go. Now, then we're supposed to be calculating this here. So we're supposed to be calculating the area is length times width, and then the volume is area times height times a third, and then we're supposed to return it. So I see two returns here. One of them is right and one of them is wrong. And I can just eyeball it and I can see that this one's wrong because remember what happens when you do 1 divided by 3 with integers? 1 divided by 3 is 0.3333. But if you do an integer calculation, then the result is going to be 0. So this bottom one is wrong because it's using integers instead of doubles again. So we want this is our code. And we need to, there's opening curly brace at the beginning of our method. We need to close it at the end. So they did provide a closing curly brace, which would go there. So this method would calculate the volume of a pyramid. All right. I guess we'll do one of these or two of these. Maybe we'll just skip and do the second one. Second one, whatever it is. So it says, define a method, calculate result. So when it says define a method, calculate result, that means we're going to write public and static, and then the return type, and then the name. And so the name was calculate result. And then it says two double parameters. Okay, so we need two double parameters. So that means in the parentheses is where the parameters go, and we can call them whatever we want, X, Y, A, B, whatever we want. So I'll do double X, double Y. That's how I do two double parameters. I'll open my curly braces and close them. Now, then I get to the word returns the product of the two parameters plus 4.4. So if we're going to multiply two doubles together and add 4.4, then obviously we're dealing with doubles, right? So this part up here where I put the question marks, we need to return a double. So two doubles come in, one double comes out. That's what we've written so far. Now it says the product of the two parameters. So if my parameters are X and Y, the product is X times Y, right? And then it says plus 4.4. So plus 4.4. So this is the product of the two parameters plus 4.4. And it says we want to return that. So you just go to the beginning of the line and type return. It still needs to end with a semicolon. And that's it. Now I'm going to do this and I'm going to show you another thing we could do afterwards. So we got it right. Sometimes people don't like this just to do return and then a bunch of math. So a lot of times what people will do is instead of this, they'll create a variable like double, maybe answer. And then what's the answer? It's going to be X times Y plus 4.4. And then if you do it this way, then what you would return is the answer. So that took 3 lines when we previously had it take 1 line. But it's really up to you how to write that. It doesn't really matter. The compiler is going to treat it the same way anyway. Like they're smart enough to know that you're doing what you're doing here. All right. That's going to be the end of this lecture. I think we went long enough. Actually, the next section, 11.4, is print methods. And this is actually probably going to be a little bit easier, I think, because the methods that you're writing are just going to be methods that print stuff to the screen. So like, look at this, public static void print menu, and it just has some print statements in it. Cool. That is a print method. So you're writing methods that just print things. So it shouldn't be too bad, but we will probably do a little bit of them in next week's lecture. That's it for now. I will talk to you guys later.